I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Flames were eating up my wedding dress. The beautiful ivory satin gown, which took 6 months to make, was now turning black and melting. Standing in front of me was Margaret Wilson, my soon-to-be mother-in-law. She was holding a lighter in her perfectly manicured hand, her face twisted with anger and satisfaction. "Now you can't marry my son," she said, her voice shaky but full of triumph. "Jason needs someone from our world, not some nobody from the wrong side of town." She threw her fancy purse over her shoulder, looking very pleased with herself. "My name is Valer Mitchell, and at 25, I never thought I'd be watching my wedding dress burn just 30 minutes before my wedding." My 3 bridesmaids stood frozen, their lavender dresses a sharp contrast to the burning mess at my feet. "Mrs. Wilson," I said, my voice calm as I reached for my phone, "you have no idea what you've just done." She laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "What I did? I saved my son from the biggest mistake of his life. You think your community college degree and your job at a small ad agency make you good enough for a Wilson? Jason belongs with Melissa Hammond. Her father owns half of downtown Cleveland." I pressed a button on my phone, watching Margaret's face as I did. My bridesmaid Jessica quickly opened a window to let out the smoke filling the room. "The wedding's off," Margaret said, waving her hand dismissively. "I'll just tell everyone you got cold feet. Jason will be upset, but he'll get over it." "Are you sure about that?" I asked, turning my phone screen toward her. On it was a live view of the wedding ceremony, the rows of white chairs, the floral arch, and the big screen showing exactly what was happening in this room. Margaret burning my dress and saying all those horrible things. Her face turned pale. What is that?" "The wedding live stream," I explained calmly. "It's for Jason's grandparents in Florida and my sister, who's overseas. It's been running for the past 20 minutes, showing everything, including you destroying my dress and saying how you really feel about me." "Turn it off," Margaret screamed, lunging for my phone. Her perfect composure was gone. "You planned this. You set me up." Jessica stepped between us. "Mrs. Wilson, everyone just watched you burn a wedding dress on live video. You might want to think about your next move." My phone buzzed with messages. My bridesmaid Tina looked at the screen and gasped. "It's Jason. He's coming here." Margaret's eyes widened in panic. She looked around the room like she was searching for a way out. "This isn't what it looks like. I was just testing the fabric. Wedding dresses are supposed to be fireproof." From my phone, we could hear the guests murmuring. The camera angle had shifted, and now it showed the wedding party's reaction. Jason's father sat in the front row, his face hard. Jason's best man was rushing toward the building, and Jason himself was no longer waiting at the altar. He was running up the aisle, his face full of shock and anger. "Valerie," my bridesmaid Melody whispered, "what do we do about the ceremony? Should we tell everyone to go home?" I looked down at the burnt remains of my dress. The practical part of my mind, the part that got me through college while working 2 jobs, was already figuring out what to do next. "No," I said firmly. "The ceremony is happening, just differently." The door burst open. Jason stood there, still in his tuxedo, his eyes moving from me to his mother to the ruined dress on the floor. Behind him were the venue manager and his father, both looking horrified. "Mom," Jason said, his voice quiet but dangerous, "tell me I didn't just watch you burn Valerie's wedding dress while saying she isn't good enough for our family." Margaret's attitude changed instantly. "Sweetheart, you don't understand. I was protecting you. This girl has been after your money from the start. I was testing her." "Stop," Jason cut her off. "Stop lying. I heard everything." He turned to me, his eyes softening. "Val, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she would do something like this." I stepped carefully around the burnt fabric and moved toward him. "It's just a dress," I said, though we both knew it was more than that. "But your mother just showed everyone what she really thinks of me, of us." Jason took my hands in his, ignoring his mother's protests. "What do you want to do, Val? It's your call." Before I could answer, Mr. Wilson stepped forward, his face grim. "Margaret, what have you done?" His voice was calm but sharp. "Richard, please," Margaret begged. "You know the Hammonds would be a better match. Their family has been part of Cleveland society for generations, unlike Valerie, who worked her way up from nothing." Mr. Wilson shook his head in disgust. "You've gone too far this time." My phone kept buzzing with messages. I glanced down and saw guests reacting to what they were seeing on the live stream. The venue coordinator stood in the doorway, looking unsure. "Miss Mitchell," she said hesitantly, "the guests are asking what's happening." Should we make an announcement? I looked at the ruined dress, then at my bridesmaids in their lavender gowns. A plan was forming in my mind, one that would turn Margaret's sabotage into something completely different. Tell them there's been a change of plans, I said, but the ceremony will happen in 20 minutes. Margaret scoffed. In what? Your underwear. You can't possibly. In my backup dress, I interrupted calmly. The room went silent. Jason looked at me, confused. You have a backup dress? I didn't, of course, but 6 months of dealing with difficult clients at the ad agency had taught me to always have a backup plan. Melody, I said, turning to my bridesmaid, remember that photo shoot we did for Cleveland Bride last month? Call Eliza and ask if her sample dress is still available. Melody's eyes lit up. The ivory sheath, with the lace overlay? It should fit you perfectly. Jason's father stepped forward, pulling out his phone. I'll have my driver pick it up right now. Where is it? As they worked on getting the dress, I turned back to Margaret, who stood there in disbelief. You really thought a dress would stop this wedding? After everything Jason and I have been through? But everyone's watching, she hissed, pointing at my phone. They all saw what happened. Yes, I said. They did. And now they'll see what happens next. I turned to the camera, knowing the guests were still watching. To everyone waiting, thank you for your patience. The ceremony will be a little delayed, but love always finds a way, even when someone tries to burn it down. A cheer came through the phone's speakers as the guests showed their support. Jason squeezed my hand, his eyes full of pride. Mom, Jason said firmly, you need to leave. Dad will take you home. You're not welcome at our wedding anymore. Margaret's face twisted with anger. You're choosing her over your own mother? After everything I've done for you? After what you did today, Jason shot back. Yes, I am. The next 20 minutes were a blur of activity. While Margaret was escorted out by security, after Mr. Wilson insisted, Eliza from Cleveland Bride arrived with not one but 3 sample dresses. The bridal suite turned into a makeshift dressing room, with my bridesmaids, the venue staff, and even some guests pitching in to help. This one, Jessica said, holding up a simple ivory dress with lace details. It's perfect for you, and we can get it ready in no time. The venue's seamstress worked quickly, making adjustments with safety pins and quick stitches. Meanwhile, Jason went back to the ceremony space to talk to the guests through the live stream, which someone had pointed toward the altar. I could hear him speaking. Today didn't start the way we planned, he said, his voice calm and steady. But Valerie and I have always believed that it's not about perfect moments, it's about how you handle the tough ones together. The guests applauded, and I smiled as Melody fixed the borrowed veil on my head. There, she said, stepping back. You look amazing. The dress wasn't what I'd imagined wearing when I became Mrs. Jason Wilson, but as I looked in the mirror, I realized it suited me perfectly. It was simpler, elegant, and strong, just like me. It showed that I could adapt and rise above anything. Wilson knocked gently on the door and came in. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Valerie, you look beautiful. I want to apologize for Margaret. What she did was wrong. You don't need to apologize for her, Mr. Wilson, I said. You didn't burn my dress. He nodded, looking relieved. Jason sent me to tell you everyone's ready when you are. And, he added with a small smile, your boss from the agency is here. He's calling this the greatest viral wedding campaign Cleveland has ever seen. I laughed. That's Eddie for you. Always seeing an opportunity in chaos. The venue coordinator appeared at the door. We're ready when you are, Miss Mitchell. The musicians are set, and we've adjusted the lighting for your new dress. Wait, I said, an idea forming. The live stream is still running, right? When she said yes, I made a quick decision. Can we keep it going for a few more minutes? I want everyone to see us walking from here to there, the whole journey, not just the arrival. 10 minutes later, as my bridesmaids and I walked through the garden path toward the ceremony space, I knew every step was being broadcast to the guests. This wasn't just a bridal entrance, it was a statement. Nothing, not even a spiteful mother-in-law with a lighter, could stop this wedding. As we reached the doors, I could hear the guests clapping and cheering. Jason stood just inside, his face lighting up when he saw me. Ready to get married? He asked, taking my hand. More ready than ever, I replied, squeezing his fingers. The ceremony wasn't what we'd rehearsed, but it felt more real than anything we could have planned. As I walked down the aisle in the borrowed dress, the guests stood up, clapping instead of staying quiet. Their faces showed more than just happiness, they showed respect and support. Jason's father stood in the front row, glancing at the empty seat where Margaret should have been. His eyes met mine, and I could see his silent apology and support. Our officiant, Pastor Mitchell, improvised perfectly. "Dearly beloved," he began, "we're here today not just for a wedding, but to celebrate love overcoming challenges. Valerie and Jason have already faced their first test as a couple, and they've handled it with grace, strength, and love for each other. During our vows, Jason added something new. 'I promise to stand by you, no matter who tries to come between us,' he said, his voice strong and clear. 'Even if, especially if, it's someone from my own family.' When it was time to exchange rings, Jason looked worried for a moment. The rings had been with his mother earlier, but Mr. Wilson stepped forward, pulling the velvet box from his pocket. 'I took these earlier,' he said quietly, 'just in case.' After we were pronounced husband and wife, the room erupted in cheers. It felt like all the tension from the day was finally released. As we walked back down the aisle, hand in hand, I knew this was just the beginning of our story, a story about love, resilience, and standing together no matter what. I noticed Eddie, my boss, filming quietly from the side. He gave me a thumbs up that was both professional and heartfelt. The reception in the Grand Pavilion's ballroom felt different from any wedding I'd ever been to. Instead of the usual polite chatter and traditional routines, there was a sense of celebration and defiance in the air. Someone had even made a custom Snapchat filter with a phoenix rising from ashes and our names underneath. "Your wedding is trending locally on social media," Jessica told me as we walked into the reception. "People are using hashtags like #RisingFromTheAshes and #Can'tBurnLove." Jason's college friend, Tom, who worked in PR, came over with his phone. "The Cleveland Plain Dealer wants a statement." Their lifestyle editor saw the live stream. Apparently, her niece was a guest, and they're calling it Cleveland's most resilient wedding. "Tell them we're grateful for everyone's support," Jason replied, his arm around my waist. "And that true commitment means facing challenges together, not running from them." As the evening went on, I noticed Mr. Wilson talking seriously with family members. It was clear he was doing damage control. Jason's Aunt Diane came to our table during dinner and leaned in to speak quietly. "Richard is really upset," she said. "Margaret's at home, but she's threatening to cut Jason out of the family business if he doesn't come to his senses. Richard told her that after today, she's the one who needs to worry about her place in the company." Jason squeezed my hand under the table. "Dad's always been the strong one in the family," he said. "Mom just never realized it because he let her think she was in charge." During our first dance, I noticed the empty tables near the front, seats reserved for Margaret's country club friends who had quietly left after the incident. In their place, my co-workers from the advertising agency had moved up, filling the space with real support. "Mr. Wilson is handling damage control like a pro," Eddie said, coming over after the dance with 2 glasses of champagne. "He's thanking everyone for staying while subtly letting Margaret's friends know they won't be missed." Jason nodded, watching his father work the room with new respect. "I think this is the first time I've seen him stand up to her so openly," he said quietly. 27 years of marriage, and today was his breaking point. The wedding photographer, originally hired by Margaret, approached us carefully. "Mrs. Wilson," the younger Mrs. Wilson, she said with a smile, "I've captured some beautiful moments today, but I wanted to ask about the dress incident. Some guests took photos. Should I ask them to keep those private?" I looked at Jason before answering. "Actually, I think honesty is the best approach. This is part of our story now." Just then, my phone buzzed with a notification. The clip of Margaret burning my dress had already been viewed over 20,000 times on a local news page. The comments were full of support, with stories from other brides who had faced difficult in-laws. "You might not have planned it," Eddie said, scrolling through the comments, "but you've started a movement. People are inspired by how you stood strong against toxic family relationships." Jason's cousin, Mia, came to our table, looking both embarrassed and determined. "I want you both to know that not everyone in the family agrees with Aunt Margaret," she said firmly. "Most of us think she went too far." "Thank you, Mia," I said, touched by her words. "That means a lot." Later, Jason got a text from his father. He read it silently and then showed it to me. "Your mother has locked herself in the guest house. She's demanding I choose between her and that girl. I've told her that her behavior today has made my choice very clear. We'll talk when you're back from your honeymoon. Proud of you both. Dad, are you okay?" I asked Jason quietly, searching his face for any sign of doubt. "I'm better than okay," he replied, squeezing my hand. For years, I watched Mom undermine Dad, belittle you, and manipulate everyone. Today, she finally showed her true colors to everyone, not just us. It feels like a weight has been lifted. As the reception continued, I noticed something amazing happening. Guests who had been stiff and formal earlier, Margaret's side of the family and social circle, were now relaxing and connecting more genuinely with my friends and family. Without Margaret's controlling presence, the barriers she'd built were starting to fall. Mrs. Wilson, the venue coordinator said, approaching with a smile, "There's something you should see." She led us to the entrance of the ballroom. There, on an easel, was a large photo frame filled with handwritten notes from guests. The heading read, "Messages of Love and Resilience for Valerie and Jason." "Your bridesmaids organized this," she explained. "They asked guests to write messages of support after what happened. 1 week into our honeymoon in the Maldives, the impact of our wedding was still unfolding. Jason and I sat on our private deck, looking out at the crystal blue water, scrolling through messages on our phones during our daily check-in with reality. Dad says Mom's staying with her sister in Cincinnati," Jason said, setting his phone down. "Apparently, Aunt Linda is the only one who still believes her version of events, that she was testing the dress fabric and everyone misunderstood." I smiled wryly, adjusting my sun hat. Hard to misunderstand someone yelling, "Now you can't marry my son," while holding a lighter. The Cleveland media had picked up our story. What started as a sensational wedding disaster had turned into a conversation about toxic family dynamics and standing up for healthy relationships. Several women's magazines had reached out, asking for interviews about setting boundaries with difficult in-laws. Eddie says the agency has gotten 3 new client inquiries asking for the team with the wedding dress Phoenix. I laughed, showing Jason the message. He wants to know if we'd consider being part of a panel discussion on crisis management when we get back. Jason took my hand, his thumb brushing over my wedding band. "Only if you want to. We can keep this private if you prefer." I thought about the messages we'd received from other couples facing similar challenges. Maybe our experience can help others. Not how I planned to start our marriage, but authentic, Jason finished. Like us. 3 months after our wedding, Jason and I attended the Wilson Family Foundation's annual gala, our first major public appearance since the honeymoon. The event, usually run by Margaret, had been completely redesigned under Mr. Wilson's direction. "Nervous?" Jason asked as our car pulled up to the Cleveland Art Museum. "A little," I admitted, smoothing my emerald gown, a stunning design from Eliza's boutique, who had turned our wedding story into a campaign about resilience and second chances. Inside, the atmosphere was noticeably different. The stiff formality was gone, replaced with genuine warmth. Wilson greeted us at the entrance, looking years younger without Margaret's controlling presence. "There they are," he said, smiling as he hugged us. "The couple who inspired our foundation's new initiative." He led us to a display showcasing the Wilson Family Foundation's newest program, Rising Phoenix Grants for women starting over after difficult life transitions. The foundation logo now had a subtle phoenix motif. "We've already approved funding for 15 women," Mr. Wilson said proudly, each one rebuilding after tough times. As we mingled with guests, I noticed Margaret's absence had changed the guest list. Gone were the status-conscious acquaintances, replaced by people truly passionate about the foundation's work. Mrs. Wilson, a young woman, approached, introducing herself as a grant recipient. "Your wedding story gave me the courage to leave my toxic marriage. Now, I'm starting my own business." Later, as Jason and I stood on the museum's terrace, he got a text. "Mom's coming back to Cleveland," he said, his expression thoughtful. "Dad says she's agreed to counseling if she wants any chance of reconciliation." I squeezed his hand. "Whatever happens with your parents, we face it together, just like we did with the wedding." He smiled, pulling me close. "Some flames are meant to destroy, others just reveal what's unbreakable."